So ladies and gentlemen, I am here with Mr. Vint Cerf.
Vint Cerf is known for his pioneering work as one of the fathers of the internet.
Vint Cerf has served as Vice President and Chief Internet Visionary for Google since 2005. He basically travels the world talking about the power and the future of the internet in bettering lives of societies.
If they had stayed in India, would they have had the same capacity and opportunity?
Has the father of the internet made himself into a Studio Ghibli avatar yet? What is something that you think deserves more attention? So if an avatar was made of you, you wouldn't be comfortable with that?
I would feel funny about having an avatar speaking lines that I didn't speak.
Are there any similar hidden opportunities you see in the AI space right now?
I had never thought about that possibility.
So ladies and gentlemen, I am here with Mr. Vint Cerf. Vint is one of the founding fathers of the internet. Vint, it's an absolute honor to be here. It's a fanboy moment for me, to be very honest. And I don't think I would have a life or a career if it was not for you. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to still be here around to have these. This is an amazing experience because this has been something that's happened in one person's lifetime and one person's career. All of this stuff started in the 1960s. So it's really been quite exhilarating to watch the evolution of computing, communications, World Wide Web, and artificial intelligence, all happening within a 50, 60-year period.
Mm-hmm. I was actually born in 1996.
Oh my goodness, right in the middle of the dot boom.
Yes. So I kind of saw the internet evolve all the way from the dial-up to the dongle, UI-based to 5G, what it is right now, and now AI. So
yes,
I've kind of experienced what you've created from a consumer end, and it's been an absolute pleasure to really experience all that. But I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Sridev. I'm from India, Bangalore. I run a company called 100x Engineers. So I'm an entrepreneur, educator, and YouTuber. We teach applied AI to founders, developers, and anybody who wants to learn AI. So we expose the possibilities of AI to everyone out there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So because the internet's obviously been a very revolutionary technology. And what AI promises is something very similar to that. From the early days of internet, are there any kind of parallels that you can draw with where AI is today? And can you talk about how you see the future of AI with reference to how the internet was back then?
So first of all, remember that I'm just this old guy who's been around for a while, and so my predictions are probably no better than yours. But there are some interesting parallels here. I think we were in uncharted territory at the beginning of networking. No one had built anything of the scale of the internet or what it has become. Mm-hmm. It started very small. There were only 3 networks involved at the beginning in the 1970s. And what's amazing to me is that it was able to scale up by about 6 or 7 orders of magnitude, just in terms of number of devices, and the data rates of the system are 800 gigabits a second in some of the optical fiber. So an interesting question, and it touches whatever it is, over 2/3 of the world's population in a very direct way. And everybody else is affected by it, even if they're not using it. So it has had a significant impact. I think AI is going to be very much like that for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it is so accessible, given that it's riding on top of the reach of the internet and, of course, the mobile phones. And, of course, now we have Starlink and other constellations to make it even easier to get access to these capabilities. So it's widely accessible. The second thing that's lovely about this is that the algorithms and the models are also widely accessible and often very open. And the internet was the same thing. It was designed to be a very open environment. The protocols were shared freely. Anyone who wanted to build a piece of internet could do that and find somebody to connect to. So I think, and we're starting to see interactions between some of the AI models, the so-called agent concept, where the agents that are implemented by the models are interacting with each other. Where this is terra incognita. I mean, we haven't ever been in a space like that. The closest we've come to that is building remote procedure calls and APIs between two pieces of more or less conventional software. That's systems architecture. But here we have designs that are a little bit less predictable than conventional software, although you and I would both almost certainly agree that even conventionally produced software produces unpredictable results because people make mistakes. They're called bugs, and bugs have outcomes that you didn't predict. These may have a richer palette of outcomes than ever before, but the capability of these systems is so shockingly good that it's hard to predict what will happen when you start bringing an ensemble of these things together to do work. I'm still in the stage where I'm starting to use these things just to get my own work done more conveniently.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. I mean, having a meeting, for example, and having something take notes has turned out to be really good.
Right.
I mean, I'm surprisingly good. I'm shockingly good, even. Preparing a summary of some kind, instead of starting with a blank page, you can start with some bullet points and have one of the AI models flesh it out a little bit based on what it knows about. Even if it doesn't know everything you know, it might start out triggering some of your ideas. So it's like a brainstorming tool.
Yep, absolutely.
Some AI models are being used in very special ways. For example, the AlphaFold model, which tells us how proteins fold up, could have significant consequences in medical treatment if we're looking for ways of interfering with a disease. Weather prediction has turned out to be another potential. Our weather prediction tools look like they work better than the conventional models, and they cost less in terms of computational power. So I'm excited about the fact that people have the possibility of exploring applications that they couldn't possibly have imagined before, thanks to the fact that these models are available in cloud environments.
So the long story short over here would be that it's extremely unpredictable, and in some ways even more unpredictable than what it was in the software era.
Probably true. And of course, that's exciting because we may end up in places where we never imagined we could get.
Right.
Certainly the applications we're seeing today fall into that category.
Right. You've been a very early cheerleader of India's potential for innovation. What advice would you have for Indian startups and leaders in order to really adopt AI in this era while mitigating the risk and also keeping in mind about the cultural nuances that exist in India?
Well, I'm not expert, of course, in Indian culture, and you have quite a diversity in the country with 22 official languages and who knows how many different dialects. I'll tell you what I think is probably most important. We need to equip people with access to the technologies and understanding of what their strengths and weaknesses are. I want to draw an example for you, and we'll see whether you think it's valid. As you know, a number of Indians have come to the United States and have either started or have become leaders of very significant corporations. One of them is the one I work for, Sundar's CEO. And there are a number of others. There's something interesting going on there. The question is, if they had stayed in India, would they have had the same capacity and opportunity? And if the answer is no, if it's no, then we have to ask, what was it that made a difference? Was it willingness to take risk? Was it available capital? Was it something else? But it makes me imagine that India has yet to fulfill its capability and possibilities, given that the most significant growth of industry has come only after transplantation into the U.S. environment. So there's maybe something missing. Maybe it's the willingness to take risk. Maybe it's just available capital. I mean, I don't pretend to fully understand, but I find it remarkable that so many of your colleagues have ended up in the United States with enormous responsibilities and big businesses to run.
Do you see that changing with the era of AI where India actually fulfills its so-called potential back in India itself?
Well, one interesting fact is that you have more people there than any place else. With the implication of that is that you have more opportunity and more personal experience, more diverse personal experience than any other place in the world. You ought to be able to capitalize on that. The raw data that you might actually have available because of your population size may allow you to explore AI applications at scale that no one else could. Now, that would be an interesting outcome.
That is true. One of the things that I ended up coming across was you talking about the domain name business,
Yes.
where you spoke about if you could go back in time, you would just buy up 1 million domains and sell them 50 years later.
Actually, it wasn't the domain names. I would have bought IP addresses
Right.
because those were handed out for free because it was an experiment. And one good friend of mine, Jim Murai, in Japan, acquired a /8, which is 16 million IPv4 addresses
Right.
for his nonprofit organization. And he sold that for $400 million.
Oh my God.
Now, it went to his nonprofit organization wide. It wasn't a personal investment. But when he did that, I remember thinking, in 1977, if I had allocated a /8 to myself personally, I wouldn't be here. I would be sitting on an island somewhere. I didn't do that because it never occurred to me that there would be a monetary value for an internet address.
Right.
Because it doesn't do anything. It's just a number. Of course, it also is a place in the internet and that you can steer to. Domain names are similar. They weren't charged for until the 1990s.
Are there any similar hidden opportunities you see in the
It's in the AI space. I had never thought about that possibility. What could it be that in AI space that would get monetized? Well, the models themselves and the content that goes into them are being monetized to some extent. So if you had special information that nobody else had that could be used to train a model, it's conceivable that special model could become a valuable commodity for doing a particular thing, maybe doing a particular analysis. I don't know. I'm glad you brought that up because I usually don't think in those terms.
So going by what you said, that's essentially wrapper products. That's essentially taking a foundational model, fine-tuning it for a very specific use case, and then sort of productizing that. Is that something that you believe has that potential right now?
Well, now you're the businessman, and I'm just the engineer. And I'm the guy that didn't think to allocate the IP address space to myself, so I don't know whether I can give you a very good answer to that question. But it's pretty clear that if you have something that will do something for other people, or that somebody can use as a tool to do something they couldn't do before, that has to be of interest to some fragment of the population. Mm-hmm. And when you see people doing things they couldn't do before because of AI, you have to come away convinced that at least some of the AI-based tools are going to turn out to be extremely valuable.
Yeah. There's been a huge trend of a lot of people making themselves into Studio Ghibli characters. Has the father of the internet made himself into a Studio Ghibli avatar yet?
I have not. And I'm feeling kind of funny about it, although I've seen some of the consequences of that, which are quite impressive. There are actors who are still alive who are acting, but who have been made to look a little younger thanks to digital processing. And my first exposure to heavy-duty digital processing came with The Lord of the Rings, because I don't remember the exact year, but it must have been like 2003 or something. I was in New Zealand, and I went to visit Weta Labs, where Peter Jackson had just finished the first of the 3 movies. And he took me into the workshop, And they had processed every single frame of film digitally in order to do emphasizing and do special effects and everything else. And that was the first time I realized that these computer-based technologies were going to make a transforming difference to the film industry, which they have now because people are shooting mostly digital these days. So AI is almost certain to have a similar kind of effect as we start harnessing it to do things that otherwise you couldn't do. I don't know how the actors feel about that. I mean, I would feel funny about having an avatar speaking lines that I didn't speak.
Okay. So if an avatar was made of you, you wouldn't be comfortable with that?
I think I would feel funny about it.
Right.
Although people have suggested that after you pass away, having an avatar might be of interest to your family, at least. And the idea of having a conversation with your great-grandfather is kind of intriguing.
I think I've kind of come to terms with that because I'm here in the US, but my team in Bangalore has access to an avatar of me. Oh, and 90% of my content on Instagram is my avatar.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I never stopped creating because of that.
Wow. Okay. The closest I've been able to come to that is that when I sleep, I usually go to sleep at 10 and wake up at 3, work for 2 hours, and then go back to sleep for a little while. And I send emails while I'm awake at 3 o'clock in the morning to leave the impression that I never sleep. Then that way my staff knows I'm always watching.
That is an interesting trick. I think an agent could actually solve that, and you could catch up on some sleep as well.
Well, I think it would be better if it was very clear that this was an avatar and it wasn't you. And a reason for that is that we project a lot of assumption on the avatars, even the ones that don't have faces. I mean, just text. The quality of the output is so good that we think it's a person, or we project social awareness on that thing, which it doesn't have. And then it causes you to be disappointed when it doesn't empathize very well with you. So people may be putting trust in these artifacts. I think I'm worried that we create things that people project too much awareness onto than they deserve. On the other hand, I'm told that a lot of people respond very positively to these sort of language exchanges because they feel empathetic.
Right. I think in time we'll know how that actually pans out. You've had a long influence on the internet, especially in the 90s, and you've had an influence at Google since the early 2000s. What is something at Google that you're really excited about right now?
Well, I'm here partly because I am excited about artificial intelligence. I'm also very interested in the quantum computing that's going on. And I'm part of the team that's doing the revision of our global optical fiber network. And that is a major undertaking to essentially increase its resilience and its capacity at the same time. And that's very important because people are becoming increasingly dependent on clouds, ours and others. And we want that dependency to be rewarded by resilience and, I would say, stability. So those investments are important to all of our users and to us, because without it, the business doesn't deliver on its promise. So I'm very excited about the investments that we're making now.
Right. What are your thoughts on centralized versus decentralized AI?
It's an interesting complaint that people are saying, well, it's too concentrated. And yet there's a funny economy of scale going on here. This is what happens in the case of data centers. It's almost always more economical to build a big data center than a whole bunch of little ones. And the only reason for building more than one of them is partly for resilience, because and also for latency. Mm-hmm. That's why companies that are doing content distribution were very popular, because they place data centers in a very distributed way. I still think the internet is extremely distributed from the technical point of view.
Yep.
Some people are saying, well, it isn't, but they're probably speaking about how many different companies offer services in a very distributed way. They just feel like the number of companies isn't big enough. Even so, even if you look at a map of the internet, you'll discover there are tens of thousands of networks. Some are very small. Some are in your bedroom or, your house. And others are very big like ours. So I still feel like it's pretty distributed, even though it's concentrated in terms of corporate capability, but there's still a lot of competition.
Right. Now, the last section of this conversation, I wanted to do it in a style called rapid fire.
Okay.
Where I just ask you a question and you answer.
I have to answer as quick. Okay.
Yeah?
Now let's try.
Awesome. What is an AI trend that you believe is overhyped right now?
Probably the avatars and the assistants are still a little on the overhyped side, even though they're getting better every day.
Okay. Conversely, what is something that you think deserves more attention?
Oh, safety, security, privacy, all deserves more attention.
Right. Would you categorize intelligence as a property or a process, or is it something else?
I think it's a process. It's a complex process.
What do you think is the TCP/IP moment of AI? Has it occurred yet, or is it yet to occur?
I think the TCP/IP moment for AI was the multi-layer neural networks becoming real, the reinforcement learning models.
Mm-hmm. What is the weirdest use case of AI you've ever seen so far?
I'm sorry, it wasn't rapid fire, was it? I think some of the little videos that have been created have really been quite weird and funny.
What kind of videos are these?
Well, I mean, people ask. I asked the thing to show me a squirrel that was going after an acorn in the middle of the Gobi Desert. And it did something fairly reasonable,
Right.
but it was weird.
What is one overlooked risk in AI that exists today that you think more people should be paying attention to?
Critical thinking. It's easy for AIs to produce information that looks good on the surface but turns out not to be. And so we need to train ourselves to think critically about what we're seeing and hearing, and ask about provenance. They're corroborating evidence for assertions that are being made. We need to train ourselves to do that.
All right. And final question. When did you actually realize how big of an impact you've created during the TCP/IP days? When did it really hit you?
The biggest impact, 1988, I know the date, or the year anyway. I went to an interop show in San Francisco. 50,000 people showed up. This is 1988. Now think about it. I started work on the internet in 1973 and on the ARPANET earlier. So 15 years have gone by. And suddenly in 1988, 50,000 people had come to a conference to learn about how the internet works and what it can do for them. And I remember walking into the exhibit, there was a 3-story Cisco systems display. And I turned to Eric Benamou, who was the CEO of Freecom at the time, and I said, Eric, how much do these displays cost? And he said about $250,000. That was in 1988. It's this 3-story thing that you could walk into and walk up the stairs and talk to the salespeople. And I remember thinking, holy moly, somebody thinks they're going to make money out of the internet. And that was when it triggered my thinking about how the general public and the private sector would get access, because they couldn't at that time. It was all either military or research community with government contracts, and that was it. No private sector. The private sector was offering software and equipment and routers and things like that. So around that time, I asked permission to find a way to let the private sector get connected to the internet, and I got permission to do that. And in 1989, we connected the MCI mail commercial system to the internet to break the appropriate use policy that said no commercial traffic would flow on the government backbones. So for me, 1988 was the year that I really believe this is going to take off.
Right. Awesome. That'll be it, Vint. Thank you so much. It was an honor and pleasure for doing.
Well, thank you. Lovely questions.
Cheers.